Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we're going to be looking at the game I played in round 8 of the US Open in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So you might be wondering what happened to rounds 3 through 7. Well, those games were not very eventful, and there were lots of blunders, not very, they just weren't very good games. Now, I might make a compilation of those blunders and bad moves, and there were a couple blunders by me too, but we won't talk about that right now. So let's jump right into this game. So I'm playing Nicholas Bruja. He is a 2161 rated player. So I'm trying to win this game, or at least draw the game to try to gain some rating. So before the game, I talked to one of my friends, and he said that this opponent likes to play a lot of hypermodern openings with the ready, like knight f3, and that does end up happening in the game. So I respond with d5, and the opening is not very eventful, not many trades happen, in fact, not any trades happen, and we're just making our own moves, not really worrying about what the other person is doing. So after queen c2, rook c8, and rook d1, this is where I should have played the move c5, breaking it into the center. And the reason this is good right now is because the pawn has not advanced to e4 yet, so if my opponent takes, it's no big deal, I can just take back with the knight. And if my opponent takes again, I can take with the rook, and this knight is pinned, and with the symmetrical pawn structure, black has basically equalized already. However, it's kind of difficult to figure out when exactly you're supposed to play c5 in these situations, and here I play queen c7 instead, which is kind of slow and unnecessary. So I'm trying to step out of this pin, but I don't really have to do that, I can just play c5 immediately. So I get rook e1, queen b8, so again I don't have to do this, I can just play c5. I should have played c5 2 moves ago, but oh well, what the game goes on. After e4, now I play c5, but unfortunately, this is not a good move anymore. And the reason is because after e takes d5 and e takes d5, which happens in the game, white has this move knight takes d5. So this just wins a pawn. And the reason it wins a pawn is because if I take with the knight, the pawn takes, and after c takes d4 with a discovered attack, the queen goes to f5, hitting this knight, and also there are 3 pieces attacking this pawn now. That means I'm going to lose a pawn, which is not ideal when you lose a pawn right out of the opening. Now, this also means I'm going to get roasted for my bad openings in the comments. That's okay, let's just see what happens in the game. My opponent does not find this knight takes d5 move. Instead, he goes d takes c5, and now I can take with the bishop. And now after pawn takes d5, there's potentially some knight takes d5 or bishop takes d5, taking advantage of the fact that if the knight takes, I can take on f2 with a discovered attack on the queen. So my opponent sidesteps that with queen to f5. This is still very annoying because it's attacking this knight, and if I take, then rook takes d7, knight takes d7, and queen takes d7. And I do have these bishops pointing at the king, but there's no other pieces to complement them. So that's why I didn't go for this. And instead I played g6 to try to kick the queen away. But the queen goes to h3, trying to stay on this diagonal. And now I play queen to f4, trying to do some stuff with this queen. And my opponent right now can just take this pawn. It's basically just a free pawn. And after the game, my opponent told me that he did not do this because he was scared that after bishop takes and pawn takes, I could play bishop takes f2 check, and after knight takes g4 and king g1, of course not king to and king f1, not king to g1, because then after queen to e3 check, this would just be a forced checkmate because of a very nice smothered mate after take the queen and queen to g1 check. No matter which piece takes, there is going to be a checkmate on f2. So the king must go to f1, and now after knight to e3 check, king can go to g1. After takes, it takes. My opponent said he was scared of rook c2 winning a piece. However, what he might have missed is after the knight goes to g4, the knight is now hanging on d7. So after white protects one of these pieces, if I take this piece, I lose d7, and with this passed pawn, this would be pretty good for white. So white didn't do this, and instead played g3 to try to trade queens, and I'm pretty happy with trading queens because my position was pretty bad. Now I don't really have to worry about these dark square weaknesses because there's no queen to checkmate me on g7. So now my opponent defends this threat on f2 with knight to d4, blocking the bishop and also opening up a discovery on g4. I move knight 2 to protect the pawn, and now after bishop to f3, this pawn is basically unsavable because if I take, I lose my bishop on b7. So if I can't save the pawn, I might as well develop my pieces. And white takes, I take, white recaptures, and I'm down a clean pawn on d5. So I'm down some material, not in a great position. What I'm trying to do here is complicate the position by making some threats, and I do that with knight to e5. So now my threat is if white does nothing, I just take this defender on d4, and now I can take the bishop after that. So my opponent moves the bishop away, and now make kind of a crazy move, but not a crazy move like a crazy sacrifice, just a move to make the position very complicated, and also my opponent's on some time pressure, so I'm trying to make him have to play some good decisions and force my opponent to play the very accurate moves, which is difficult in time pressure. So I play knight to d3, kind of, and this is kind of hard to navigate all the best variations now for whites, because I'm threatening to take this rook, threatening to take the bishop, my opponent has to take the rook, and now I'm attacking the bishop. So what white has to do here to preserve some winning chances is bishop c3, discards the e1 square, which is important, and after knight b4 to just take, and then knight c6, trade again, and with this protected passed pawn here, white has some winning chances, it's probably not much. After rook e7, white can try to play rook d7, but I just take, and then after bishop e7, this should be a draw because of the opposite colored bishops. However, white does not do that, instead takes on d3, and this allows a nice tactic, rook e1 check, bishop f1, and now bishop a6, and now I have a skewer on this rook. So white has to move the rook, white plays rook e3, trying to, after king takes g2, play rook e8 check. And this would be a very devastating check if it did happen, if I play rook b1 trying to attack the bishop. Rook e1 check, king g7, knight f5 is a checkmate. And if I play bishop to f8, bishop a3 would win the knight because of the pin. So I can't play rook b1 yet, some foreshadowing there, but instead I can play king to f8 to stop this check. And now my opponent makes the game-losing blunder. So I'm going to turn off the evaluation here to see if you can find these moves by yourself. So after rook f3, why is this a blunder? Well, the idea is to play rook knight to e6 check to fork the king and the bishop. However, the rook on f3 is kind of a weird square, and this allows me to take advantage of that with a threat of my own. Okay, so the move is rook to b1 attacking the bishop, ignoring this threat because it sucks, it doesn't work, it doesn't matter, it's insignificant. So I attack this bishop, my white plays knight to e6 check. Now where do I put my king? I probably want to put it on g8, because the geometry from the knight means it's not going to be able to check me again. So if I go to e8, then knight to c7 would be pretty nasty, forking the king and the bishop, I wouldn't want that. If I go to e7, white can run away from the threat with tempo. This actually is still winning, but why would I even allow this? So I play king to g8, sidestepping the check. Now after knight to c5, the natural move is to recapture the knight. However, there is a way for me to end the game right now, and this is what my opponent missed in time pressure. It is the move bishop to f1 check. This wins the game because the king must step to g1 or h1, does not matter. And now I do not play bishop e2 to win the rook. Instead, I win the king with bishop to h3, guarding g2, and the king is basically ice skated on the back rank, as some streamer would say. So white resigns the game here, and because the bishop blocks does nothing, so white resigns the game. I get the win. What could have white have done here? Well, not much. The position's already slipping away from him, and in time trouble, it's very difficult to not make any blunders here because of the two bishops. They're very tricky with these threats. So kind of unfortunate for my opponent, who had a pretty big opening advantage, but then he just played some inaccuracies and lost the advantage due to my kind of crazy moves. So if you one of the lessons here in this game is if you're ever in a bad position where you're kind of down to some material or you have pretty bad pieces, just try to create some threats, try to create some complications, force your opponent to find those accurate moves, and if they fail, then that might allow you to get back in the game. And that's what happened here. Okay, so after this game, I moved to 6 out of 8. So that's a very good score for me. It's +4. And with 1 round to go, I can guarantee at least 6 out of 9, which is a pretty nice score. Now, in the next game, I do get paired against a Grandmaster. So that's what I'm going to show in the next video. And that's basically it for today. Bye, everyone.